Wakey, wakey, hello, good morning. And many thanks indeed for joining us here on Morning Prime on this beautiful day of the 23rd of November 2023. It is Thursday, wet morning. Make sure you keep yourself layered up and warm. And also don't forget to carry your umbrella so that at least you may keep off the rain from your head. Glad that you're joining us. Today is Sokoni, where we train our focus on matters economy, how it is performing right now. And yesterday was the resumption of the National Dialogue Committee, and smack dab on the table of that particular discussion was also the cost of living. And this is bound to be continuing until something happens to try and, of course, offset what Kenyans are really puzzled about our economy right now with the rising cases of taxes and also the cost of living becoming unbearable. This is not only Kenya, also the entire world is facing inflationary rates that are rising. But it seems also we are all not faring well as far as our taxes are concerned. We shall be discussing also the ticklish issue regarding the government-to-government deal. We have the Petroleum East Africa Institute, or the Petroleum Institute of East Africa, saying the G2G deal was germane, very kosher. They're happy about it. We shall be looking at also why Anjeri never appeared before the members of parliament, and members of parliament will be heading to Dubai and Saudi Arabia to try and trail this particular $17 billion deal, where it all began, so that we might be putting all things into perspective. But let's see how the weather will be today. Remember to carry your brolly. That's how the weather will be today. And of course, we shall be putting tails on that following the story of El Nino billions, that now it seems there is sort of misunderstanding between the national government and the county government regarding that. And that is much late in the course of the program. Allow me to just show you or run you by the dailies much late in the course of the program after I sort out my technical challenges here. And then we'll also just be keeping also those particular dailies on the splits so that you may be also getting a brief on what is in the dailies this morning. We have with us Engineer Patrick Obath, who is the chair of KEPSA Foundation. Also, we have with us Professor Gituro Naina, who is a professor at the School of Business, University of Nairobi. He will be joined by the chair of the Kenya Development Corporation. This is Bunyasi Sakwa, and Bilokero as well, who is a political economist. But let me just introduce these two gentlemen. They were missing, right? We had Engineer Patrick Obath in Dubai, and now here also we have Gituro Naina in Hamburg, Germany.
Right.
And he neither came with the ham or the burger. So we say, what a burger. What a burger.
Yes, indeed.
All right, but you can just tell us how Germany is, what you were doing in Germany briefly, right?
Yes, it was an intense 1 week and a bit cold. There was a fall, but we were learning about AI. Artificial intelligence.
Just hold it there. AI. Talking about AI, my technical challenges here are sorted a bit. Before it goes away, let me just go to the papers so that at least some of the viewers who want to step out of the house, they can see the papers. This is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. Puzzle of El Nino billions is what is on the front page of the Standard today. Government set aside 10 billion shillings to mitigate the effects of heavy rains. However, the county government have been told to adjust their allocations to help victims. Governors are up in arms, but the deputy president is adamant as the big boys trade blame Wananchi as suffering. So where is the money? That is a probing question there. And why candidates are shunning UDA elections is another story there on the teaser. KCB assets cross 2 trillion shillings mark. Israel Hamas agree on ceasefire that begins tomorrow. And also we have Giants fall to Minos in qualifiers. This is how the Standard is looking this morning. We shall be looking at the rest of the dailies as well. As I told you, I'm trying to sort out my technicalities here. How Treasury gifted farm 5 billion shillings for air is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. And as new tax cuts to wait, Ndungu tells talks team. And also, Mount Kenya MPs claim Mungiki is back in full swing. That is what is on the front page of the Star this morning. Governor differ with Rigathi over El Nino billions. That is what we have on the front page of the People Daily as well. And Senator Mpaka Waziri Tope Taifa Leo, this is about Cherargei. Adai Murkomen amekuwa akizuru China sana na kupendelea wajenzi wake. That is the story that you can follow on inside the Taifa Leo. KCB guarantees in G2G fuel imports hits 515 billion shillings. Lender issues 45 letters of credit valued at 3.37 billion shillings, $3.37 billion, I should say. Bank says it has strong trade finance teams behind deal. And of course, they posted yesterday their results. We'll give you, that is the 9-month financial year results, 9-month financial results yesterday. We shall give you also the report on that much later in the course of the program. But let me go back to Professor Gituro Naina, since the papers have disappeared on me, to tell us what was happening. AI. Yesterday also we saw in the dailies that we have the East African lawyers who are raising concerns regarding the preparedness of East African region regarding the artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's not a question of actually getting prepared. It's here with us.
It's here with us.
So it's actually a question of how do I fast track?
Aligning yourself.
Absolutely. And of course, one of the things which came was whatever AI shares with us is a brain, which I call HI. There's human intelligence behind it. It sort of makes the work a bit efficient. But one thing I took from there, and I think this is very important for us here and the Kenyans, and Ilaki put it so well in the Standard of this week, Sunday. We were there for a week. We were about 4 guys from TZ, 4 from here, some ladies. And we had this ticket, plane ticket, for those days, and we're using that on a daily basis. Nobody asked for our ticket. Nobody. We just got to the train, exchange at Berliner Tor, I could recall some German in it. And our mind went to trust. And the other thing we got is the deterrent. If you are there and you don't have your up-to-date ticket, the consequences are severe. But that trust is amazing. is amazing. And that's something we create. You create a nation. You create a nation from a country. And that's what Mwalimu Julius Nyerere did. He stepped back, looked at Tanzania, and created a nation today called Tanzania.
Indeed.
That's what I take home from that.
Fantastic.
Excellent work.
Patrick Obath, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was in Dubai.
With the floods.
Dubai was interesting, I can tell you. It was, it is a cooler time of the year. And we actually went to, as usual, we normally go and negotiate the golf and stuff like that. And this time, as usual, we normally expose the government to the event, just so they can see the opportunities that the event can bring. But I arrived on a Wednesday night, and that night it rained. And at least Dubai, the city, I was in Jumeirah, most of the streets were flooded. I mean, they don't seem to have drainage. Yeah. And I think also the rain that happened was one of these once in a 10, 20-year flood that happened. It was really heavy rain. In fact, some of our colleagues were arriving on a later flight that was supposed to arrive on Thursday morning at 5:30. Their flight was diverted to Muscat. So they ended up eventually arriving in Dubai at about midday. So even flights landing and everything else, because of the wind and rain and everything else, was disrupted. Yeah. So and it took about 2 days for the streets to clear of water. And they had, here we normally have vacuum trucks to empty cesspits. There they had vacuum trucks sucking water and then going to throw it away elsewhere. So it was quite an interesting experience in a country that is has got some of the best roads, infrastructure, and everything else in the region. And then good old El Nino, the weather, causes such havoc.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there are no El Nino fans that were never discussed. Never saw the light of day. That was not the debate on the headlines.
No, there all they did basically was deployed the infrastructure that they have that is able to cope with that. Yeah, so they just had vacuum trucks, whatever it is, and they had people unblocking drains and all that. And it took about 2 days. After 2 days, everything became normal. But I think the key thing now, if you talk about Kenyans traveling abroad, it's just the sheer cost of being out of the country. If you translate it back into Kenyan shillings, you're paying a lot for a similar thing. So when you talk about going out with your Kenyan shillings out there, you need to double the amount that you take with yourself to go and spend outside. It's just, that's really the
shillings really hit.
The shillings really hit, really hit. Yeah. So anywhere you go, we're paying the equivalent of about 30,000 shillings a day on hotels. The same hotel we stayed last year, we were paying 19,000.
19,000.
Yeah. So that's the impact. It's
huge, actually.
Okay, one is also, I think, the country itself is getting a bit more expensive, but just the Kenya shilling really hits. Yeah.
Right, Bill Okero will tell us, because I can see CBK now is asking the banks is intervening for the banks to try and release the dollars that they've been holding. And we wondered why wouldn't they have done this earlier, because at least there is the shilling now, it's easing a bit, not really a blip. So you can tell us, why was this intervention not done earlier? People are talking about, and I know even from last year you're raising these concerns on what is happening with the dollar. So you can shed some light on it. Good morning.
Morning. I think CBK, or let me put it, government is playing politics.
It's playing politics with the dollar.
As usual. Because two things. One is political and one is IMF. Initially, I think it was the IMF's pressure that, look, your shilling is overvalued, guys. Relax. Let the shilling find its own value now. So I think for the last couple of years, that has been the... But in the last 1 year, the argument has been, and repeated loudly by members of this administration, that Uhuru's government had been tweaking with the exchange rate mechanism in order to create that artificial value, and this is the argument that the government has been propping up this thing legally, and we are now paying the consequences. I think that has been the consequence. That has been the argument. But what has happened is the repayments of the foreign currency denominated loans has hit the government. This is now when they realize, guys, we can't go on this way. We must intervene in the market and keep the shilling, stabilize the shilling. Otherwise, Every single day, they cannot go back to Parliament. They went to Parliament last week asking for 200 billion because of the effects of the shilling. And, a few months ago, they were doing the same thing again. So I think they have realized that it's time to intervene. And this is what we have been saying, that globally, when the volatility in the exchange rate creates a significant amount of instability both in the financial markets and even in the businesses, governments intervene. Mm-hmm. Yes, they must establish. That's why we have central bank, to stabilize the financial market. You cannot simply sit and say, a former government investor, so let it go. But I think they have realized now it's going to cost them an arm and a leg in terms of repayment of debt. Yeah. This is why the government is intervening. No other reason, not because of me and you.
Are you surprised with the double speak?
Also this issue of releasing dollars, the banks. The banks hold those dollars for somebody, right? And I can instruct you to keep them for me. You can't just... Normally, because I could get them easily, I didn't worry because I knew they were there. But right now, I tell my banker, I want my dollars, I want visibility, don't move them.
And it's mainly because of the dual exchange rate mechanism,
exactly.
CBK has had, which they don't want to admit. But in effect, what they've been doing is to try and have a fixed exchange rate. So central bank has its own rate. 149, 150, 151 now, 152.
152.
But in the market, it's 156. They know that there's been this dual mechanism. So why would an exporter convert his money into shillings when he knows that tomorrow he'll be forced to buy it at 156? So the money is that's the thing.
So the bank won't release that money. As an importer, whatever it is, I'll put my dollars, does wake up. Yeah.
So there has been an issue with, should I say, with the
dual exchange rate
pricing, the dual exchange rate from the central bank, and what the central bank has put as a threshold, the banks are not following that particular threshold.
No.
So it's
but they are required
different.
to buy. The banks are required to buy the dollars at that CBK rate.
Yeah.
But they can sell at any rate they want. That is the irony of all this. This is why banks have been making super profits from Forex in the last couple of years.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we shall be discussing that, putting it into perspective as well. And with the G2G, also the scandal that is going on, or the scam about it, and where we have different voices lending their voices regarding this particular deal as well. But members of the National Dialogue Committee are yet to agree on proposals aimed at lowering the high cost of living in the country. This despite the members spending all day behind closed doors on Wednesday, together with Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, who had been invited to help the committee crack the cost of living nut. But as KTN's political affairs reporter David Mudoka reports, the committee has assured Kenyans that it will reach a consensus and have a joint report ready by Saturday, just a day before Sunday's deadline.
After failing to agree on proposals to lower the high cost of living in the country last week, members of the National Dialogue Committee on Wednesday returned to the negotiating table to give the talks between the government and the opposition another shot. This time, the members invited Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u to help them establish a middle ground. The Treasury Cabinet Secretary arrived at midday and spent almost 3 hours behind closed doors with the National Dialogue Committee. According to the committee's co-chairs, Professor Ndung'u's presentation centered on which taxes the government can do away with or reduce in an attempt to lower the skyrocketing cost of living.
We had a very candid, and that's why we sought to have a closed-door meeting with him, because we wanted a very candid engagement of a situational analysis of the state of the economy and what is plausible now in the medium term and in the long term.
Just to affirm that engagement with Professor Ndung'u was centered on the taxation regime, as Kimani Ichung'wa just said, and of course the very important matter of cost of living.
The committee failed to reveal whether the 16% VAT on fuel and the 1.5% housing levy were among taxes that featured in the discussions after the opposition last week proposed that the two levies should be first on the chopping block. It appears, though, that the opposition is still adamant on the two levies after co-chair Kalonzo Musyoka said that there is still much left to discuss even after their meeting with Ndungu to find a common ground.
The issues are heavy, and because they're heavy, they may look a little heavy on our faces. But we're doing everything we can.
In fact, if you look at the documents we have, we are like halfway.
Kuna yale ambayo tutasikilizana. Yeah, kuna yale ambayo pengine tutasikilizana, and we'll tell it to you.
Ishungwa assured Kenyans who hope the report will address the cost of living and specifically taxation of a positive outcome.
We shall be here together with our technical and secretariat teams up to Saturday, and we can announce to the country that we shall be able to have a report adopted and given to the country, released to the country on Saturday.
This now gives the committee just less than 48 hours to agree on the cost of living issue and draft a joint report that will be presented to Kenyans. David Muthoka, KTN News, Nairobi.
President William Ruto has set January 1st as the date for the implementation and complete rollout of universal health coverage. He says conversations around regulations involving different stakeholders will start next week. Meanwhile, the president has directed that KEMSA and MEDS, a faith-based medical supplies unit, to work together in medical supplies across the country. He says this will bring down the cost of healthcare.
President William Ruto recently signed 4 health acts which will soon be actualized. Among the key ingredients in the rollout of UHC is the enactment of regulations that will bring to life the laws. The president has called on Health Cabinet Secretary Susan Nakhumicha to finalize the regulations by December.
So again, good luck with that conversation, and it is my intention that before 1st of January, we must have settled that conversation so that we can effectively make sure that all Kenyans have access to universal health.
He insists that those who earn more must equally pay more for healthcare, while the ones at the bottom of the pyramid access free healthcare.
Health is not a luxury. Health is not something that anybody should miss because of their financial status. The indigents, the people who cannot pay, will be paid for by the government of Kenya. Those who can pay, depending on their ability, should pay depending on their ability.
Meanwhile, the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA, and Mission for Essential Drugs and Supply MEDS are now working together. This follows an earlier directive issued by the President William Ruto.
You had directed, and KEMSA is already working on it, that we pull our procurement together. That it's significant stock that we see here, we put together with KEMSA, we should be able then to achieve a good economies of scale, that eventually the last price that ends up to the patient is manageable.
Ruto spoke while officiating the commissioning of a state-of-the-art microbiology lab by MEDS that costed over 100 million shillings.
This new facility will increase the capacity of the laboratory to carry out our wider range of tests, hence enhance contribution to improving quality of healthy commodities in the country and the region, and fighting the menace of counterfeit medicines.
Local manufacturing is essential to UHC. Lowering the cost of drugs and medical supplies will make the system sustainable.
President Ruto said there is a need for support for local manufacturers in building capacity in scaling up healthcare in the country. Husna Mohammed, KTN News, Nairobi.
Pastoral businesswoman Anjeri was a no-show before the Energy Committee on Wednesday. The trader was invited to shed more light on the oil importation saga and provide proof of documentation. According to her lawyers, Anne was sick and immobile. And as KTN's Daniel Karuki reports, the committee has warned that failure to appear will see summons issues.
Businesswoman Anne Jerry had an appointment with the Energy Committee of the National Assembly. She was expected to shed light on the controversial 17 billion shillings diesel cargo, which has become political fodder in recent days. Anne Jerry was a no-show.
It is with humble regret that our client, Ms. Anne Jerry Joroge of Anne's Imports and Exports Enterprises Limited, will not be able to make it for the invitation to meet the Departmental Committee on Energy regarding the disputed oil consignment, as she is indisposed and immobile.
The lawyers representing Anne Jerry explaining that she would appear at a later date.
Do you have any supporting documents to support that she's unwell, or even a medical sheet to indicate that she was attended to by this particular doctor?
So therefore, the meeting again for the ministry stands adjourned until we get to this Anne Jerry and get to understand her particular position.
Jerry has been at the center of a back and forth on the importation of the multi-billion fuel cargo. Jerry claimed to own the consignment even as the government dismissed the claims, accusing her of using forged documents and that her company was not licensed to import petroleum.
When we have matters of national interest, you are first invited to appear. Then if you continue making excuses, then you are compelled to appear.
Opposition leader Raila Odinga has already called for the immediate resignation of Energy Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirichir and his Treasury counterpart Njuguna Ndung'u over the alleged scheme to procure petroleum products through a purported government-to-government agreement with Saudi Arabia. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News, Nairobi.
And petroleum industry players have backed the government's deal with the Middle Eastern state-owned oil companies to import fuel. This even as the G2G fuel importation deal continues to generate heated debate after the opposition termed it as a scam, calling for its termination. All right, we'll give you more details of that particular report. But before we even delve deeper with other stories as well, we just want to follow and put tails on this particular G2G deal. And we'll begin with you, Patrick Obath, just to tell us why is it a holy grail to get facts? And also was a no-show before the parliamentary committee. And it seems government is giving different stories. We have the oil importers also have, they're backing, they're saying this deal is kosher, is genuine. And we have the Petroleum Institute of East Africa also indicating the same. And we have legislators who have a different story regarding the 17 billion shillings and how Treasury actually forwarded this money to this very shadowy company that we have scanty details about. What is going on?
Let me speak about what I know and maybe speculate about what people are speculating about. And I think the issue here, there are two issues that begin and end at the port of Mombasa. That I think is those are the two clear issues. Bringing oil to the port of Mombasa, it was subject to OTS, the open tender system. What has happened is that the open tender system has now been extended to also include the G2G. So the G2G brings oil to Mombasa. Once it arrives there, it then follows whatever has been in existence for all this time. So there's a landed price, and that then, that flows through into the system. Now, the oil marketers have only commented on the bit starting from the importation. And the comment is that prior to the G2G agreement, oil companies were finding it difficult to get dollars to pay for the imports that were coming in. And that really was the complaint. And we were getting shortages and delays because they could not get money, so that when they issue an LC, they've actually got cash that can pay for it. So what happened was that the government then said, we will intervene, and instead of you paying in dollars, you'll pay in Kenya shillings. But in order for that to happen, the government then said, we will go and negotiate with a third party or third parties for a 6-month delay in the payment of the shipments that are coming in. So that particular bit helped the oil marketers because now they do not have to buy dollars. They sell in Kenya shillings and pay in Kenya shillings into an escrow account held by banks nominated by the government. And it is now the role of the importer, which is the G2G arrangement, to find the dollars to pay for the fuel. So the oil marketing companies, that is the bit they're saying, they like that bit because it takes the pressure off them in terms of having to find dollars. The oil marketing companies, the PIA and all its members, have not commented on the acquisition process. Now, the acquisition process is the one that is mired in all these controversies and everything.
Maybe we should just listen to what they really commented on if the acquisition bit was not on it, so that we can see where the devil is in the details as far as acquisition is concerned. Let's just listen in.
The petroleum industry understood that the government had to move quickly to salvage the US dollar crunch situation and the rapid Kenya shilling depreciation. In March to April 2023, dollars were being availed well above the CBK rates at Kenya shillings 145 to the USD. The second intervention was on the settlement of fuel stabilization debt, and starting September 2022, the government started settling that debt, the 60 billion stabilization debt, through both cash and government securities. The impact of the government-to-government interventions on the security of supply of petroleum products is as follows. The first one, reduced demand of the US dollar, which regularized the security of supply of petroleum products, as oil marketing companies now access petroleum products in a timely manner using local currency, which is the Kenya shilling. Reduction of demurrage and financing costs due to timely payment of cargoes by the oil marketing companies. The interventions also created an enabling business environment for oil marketing companies to guarantee security of supply of petroleum products to consumers in Kenya and in the region, which is their core business, as opposed to constantly addressing the challenges of the US dollar accessibility or lack thereof. The petroleum sector business environment is more stable due to the predictable situation that the fixed premiums have created in a volatile international market.
Right. It's more stable right now, as she indicates there. You're talking about acquisition. Truly, she's not mentioned any acquisition, so you can give us more details that you know.
I mean, that really, Debal, is where all these questions with Anjeri and what have you and everything else, the acquisition process is the one that has so many unknowns. Although, you know, one party says there's a lot of unknowns, one party says it is there, the contract is clear, it's in the open. Yeah? But that open is where the question is. I mean, can I go to the internet and see it? And so forth. So that acquisition process is the one that is creating all this excitement around the 17 billion, you know, and, you know, why the three companies were chosen, who chose them, and why those three and not any other three, why wasn't it an open tender, etc. So all that is in the acquisition process, and that is squarely on the government of Kenya. It has, you know, the oil marketing companies, as I say, once it lands in the country, it has really made activities much, much easier and predictability. The issue of, you know, the payment in Kenya shillings is much, much easier for the oil companies. Yeah. So the G2G has worked for that bit, but the other bit in terms of the price of oil, right? Globally, the prices are going down. Here, the prices have remained high or going higher. That explanation has to be found in the terms of the cost of importation, of bringing in of fuel, because that is very much in the G2G domain. And then the balance of it, we talk about all the time, is the internal taxes and costs.
Right. Yeah. Bill Okero, you were sniffing like a sniffer dog on this particular import G2G deal from last year. You say there's something that is not really very clear and limpid regarding the G2G. And the fact that also Anne Jerry is a no-show is indicative that there's so much that really meets the eye than what we're being told regarding the whole issue. Well, as far as the transaction is concerned, for the benefits of the oil marketers, it is good. But the acquisition of it, that we cannot really account for 17 billion shillings and, you know, just so many metric tons of barrel of oil that is coming into the country. I mean, for that, I shudder in terms of even security, that the government will be unbeknownst to itself that there is such a truck that is coming to its ports and shores, and it has no sorting idea. First of all, you agree with what?
I think let me start by saying that the government is a major player in the petroleum industry. And so I'm not surprised if the Petroleum Ministry of East Africa backs the government in this argument. I mean, they don't have much choice. I mean, they'll be told, issue a statement. Because
if you don't align,
government plays a key role in the whole process of importing and all that, so they have to. But I think the issue has been very, very clearly articulated by Patrick. The question that we have always raised is what is happening in that deal between those Gulf entities and the three companies they appointed, as the government puts. This is where the information is not available. So what our argument, my argument has been that clearly this system is not as transparent as the open tender system that we've had, which was very clear. Everybody knows what was going on. The premiums are competitive. Here we have a situation where the premiums went up 3-4 times, and we were told it's because this thing is on credit. Third, then that's the agreement between those companies and the three companies here, and what other payments are being made. For instance, I know that there's a lot of money being paid through Galanas and Gulfs and the three companies that have been appointed here, because Patrick knows when these things come here, you have to do a costing. And in that costing, you can include whatever you want. Administrative charges, you call it LC charges, you call it clearing charges, you call it port charges. That is where you can load things if you are, want to make some money. So this is why the questions about these agreements, really, and how these things, the costings are done, is critical. And that's why our product is expensive. And this is why countries like Uganda know what is going on. And they must be privy to all these things. They're saying, sorry, I think we'll find an alternative. And the whole president of our country said, this is, brokers are making things expensive for this country. And our country is mum about it. But the other aspect that you have raised about the 17 billion, I still think the questions raised by the Senator for Busia regarding the withdrawals of money by the Ministry of Energy from Treasury over and above what was budgeted is something that the government needs to take very seriously. In fact, these MPs should not be wasting their time talking to Anne Jerry and looking for it. They should be dealing with that matter. The argument is very simple. They say, this senator says, the amount budgeted for the ministry was 5.9 billion. But the amount that the ministry was allowed to withdraw from the consolidated fund was 40 billion. Plus, they were allowed to use the internal revenue, the A&A that they collected of 20 billion. So 60 billion. And part of it, the explanation given is that, we paid for the subsidies of fuel that was brought forward from the Tourist administration and so forth. And we know no money has been paid. They are being offered bonds today. So this is a matter which Parliament should have jumped in from day one instead of chasing Anne Njeri. But lastly, I think the question of Anne Njeri has been, you just need to reflect on what Justice Maraga said a few years ago. Is it Maraga or Justice, the former CJ? William Mutunga said, this is a bandit economy. I mean, somebody wakes up in the morning and says, this is my oil, 17 billion. Walks to the office of the CS Energy and says, that's my oil. And CS is not alarmed and doesn't call the police or take this lady to Madare or something. He says, report to CID, maybe they'll help you. And so the intrigues
Report to Madara first.
The intrigues. Clearly, there is more than meets the eye in this matter, and I'm sure as time will tell, we will know what has happened. But this is not just a lady who woke up. And
so were you expecting a sakas yesterday when Anjeri will appear? Because according to many, even her mom is surprised that Anjeri, she's well oiled.
Yeah. Anjeri does not, if I was her, I would not go to parliament. Let them arrest me. Because this is a matter that has been deemed to be criminal by CID, have been taken to court.
Yeah.
I have my case also in court. It's a matter before the court. Parliament should give us breathing space. Let the courts first rule on this matter. Why do you, Parliament is sometimes used to try and derail issues. In the process of so many. Tomorrow will be another committee of Parliament that will also jumping and says, even as we want to. This is one way of getting these things muddied
and now they're headed.
So a committee already is going to Dubai and Saudi Arabia.
Even to Russia.
Even to Russia. They want to track all the route that this particular tracks. So Russia.
For Parliament, every situation is an opportunity.
This is an opportunity. If you're in that committee, will you also be?
How else do you get to know other than traveling the same route?
And see where the bottlenecks are.
But Nabal, I find this a bit depressing. This whole episode. Not just 17 billion, including that and the whole fuel saga. For me, the judgment as for its success, or relative or absolute, can only be using the arguments they used in the beginning, which is that it will bypass the constraints of an expensive dollar that's in short supply and is, by the same definition, expensive. So we have just found a cheaper route of doing it. That has not panned out to be the case, for whatever reason there is. And unfortunately, it's at a time when global prices are ebbing. They're not spiking like our domestic prices are. So that whole oil saga, in all its dimensions, is proving to be more and more depressing. There must be a better way of handling that kind of issue, or even managing the public information around it that is needed. Some quasi-judicial processes like that of the senator for Busia will force out certain information and will spill out some information when others have been released. But that just deepens the frustration of many people that tell us what's happening, come out clean and explain it. There are so many dynamic things happening that this can't stay at the headline for more than a month. So come out and tell us what it is, and we move on and wait for tomorrow's surprises, if there are any. So I find this whole oil saga a little depressing. But I like Patrick's explanation on the offshore side. He has said clearly what has happened. And on the domestic side, he's a man with long experience in this as well as below. The domestic side is the usual game, as it were, but which also has got a lot of room for maneuver. I think that at a time when taxes are high and we needed tax revenues and so on, despite all the arguments around it, we should not get completely muddied up with this rent-seeking behavior that seems to be coming out very strongly. That's all I can say on this.
Professor Gituro Wanaina, it seems that the whole issue that is encumbering or is acting as an encumbrance is the lack of information. But the president has been very categorical that this information is in the public domain. All right, it is with the legislators. What are you talking about? It is transparent, it is open. So what transparency are we talking about if this information is in the public domain?
You're right.
So where is the information?
One, I think perhaps this really, Jerry, was to give certain information which was unpalatable. There could be also that argument. So the committee says she didn't show up. Because she easily spilled the beans if she went there. So there's certainly a way we could look at why she didn't appear. But coming to your point, and this is interesting because it goes back to SGR and give us the document about the SGR, which was not coming. Very strongly used in the campaigns. And I think Bill is right here. Why don't we just provide that G2G information? and come out very clear, transparent. Now, you say it's there in the public. You try, you can't get it. But my understanding here is there's a certain way, as a government, you have to take responsibility on informing the Kenyans. And you can make the decision. Because what happened now, they are leaving us to speculate. Provide that information. And this is it. The idea was great, because we were short of payment. It was great. But how it was done, I think that's what we are really questioning, how the G2G was done. And it sort of gives you some pointers, excuse me, in the sense that if Uganda is already saying, hapa kuna kitu, Rwanda is joining, Burundi is joining, then you're like, there's something not right here. Why us? Why are you the one seeing it's something we can go with? So if we really want to clear the air, give us that opportunity. Give us the information. You scan it up. I saw Ajiro talking there. I think she's Democracy, Institute of Democracy or something. And when you got married, you were told 3 things when you got married.
Petroleum Institute of East Africa.
PIA.
Yeah, okay. But when I got married, was communicate, communicate, communicate. Communicate us with Kenyans. That's what we want. But the bottom line, at times you feel like we are in a circus.
Yeah. But I think the key thing here, and Will is quite right, if I can put my hand up and say I signed on behalf of the government,
right,
and on the other side somebody puts up their hand and says I signed on behalf of that government, simple, that's it, right? And that should not be anything that is difficult, because somebody did sign that deal, right? G2G is a process,
yeah.
But who signed it? Was it the Treasury? Was it the Ministry? Was it who? Somebody signed that document on behalf of the government of Kenya. And it doesn't take much for Patrick Obath to stand up and say, me, I was the chief negotiator and I'm authorized
this is
by
what
Parliament
I signed
and whatever
for.
it is. And in accordance with all the statutes in Kenya, I signed on behalf of the government with full authority. Right? And on the other side, the same thing happens. Right? Was it the government of Saudi Arabia, or was it the trading company of Saudi Aramco? Which I think is really the case. It was Saudi Aramco, not the government of Saudi Arabia. And the word G2G sort of brings up this idea that our president and the sheikh
right.
signed the agreement, or something like that, or or their principal officers.
Even if they check this Aramco to be a government entity, on this side, Galana and Galfa, these are not government entities. So the G2 story.
At least it should have been a National Oil Corporation of Dubai or UAE, something.
No, there is.
No, I mean,
how the government come in is not apparent.
It's not clear.
It doesn't. No, the government is very clear. They signed the oil purchase deal. That is it. Yeah, and that is what I'm saying. If somebody can say I signed it and I signed it, then the G2G bit is signed.
And it's right that they signed it
below
under
that,
the government. Yes.
Below that, then the nomination of these companies, right, by Saudi Aramco and so forth and so on, to the ones to deliver to Kenya is now a different question. Yeah. Because according to EPRA, you have to be registered, whatever it is, to be able to bring fuel into this country and be able to sell it to the oil marketers. So you need to be a registered trader in the country to do that. Yeah. So
the narrative is wrong. There's something rotten.
So I think a simple, clear statement about just 3, 4, 5 lines would actually make demystify this whole thing. The agreement was signed between Officer X and Officer X of this organization and that organization. Level 1. That second level, these oil companies, Saudi Aramco, whoever it is, and so forth, did not have access directly to the market in Kenya according to the EPRA, to the petroleum rules. Therefore, they nominated X to act on their behalf.
All right.
Right? And if that is the case, they say they nominated, not that they went on tender. Right? And the nomination process is theirs. It doesn't belong anywhere here.
Right.
So I think if somebody comes out and just makes very clear statements on the steps, I think the mystique will go, and all this hot air that we are hearing at the moment will stop happening, and we can go back to running a country.
All right. Does the mandate now being given to EPRA to regulate crude oil business in the country? Will it make any discernible difference? Does it come under this shroud of and clarity, so to speak, that is happening? Will it make any difference, or that is a different story?
That is what I call anticipatory regulations.
Anticipatory regulations. All right. Hold on that anticipatory regulation as we anticipate our break as well. Right now, we'll take a short break. When we circle back, of course, we shall be looking at KCB, the way KCB also has been guaranteeing this government-to-government deal. What does it portend for this particular bank that, of course, is highly valued in terms of asset value right now when it continues apace with guaranteeing government projects? Can it be affected or impeded